I'm delighted today to welcome Ezgi Verner to the Finding Ada conference. Ezgi is the People Experience Director for Xero in the UK and EMEA. Originally from Izmir, a city on the western coast of Turkey, Ezgi moved to London 9 years ago and lives with her husband Ed, her son Luca, and her stepson Leo. Ezgi, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sue. It's really nice to be speaking to you, and thanks for the opportunity. Very briefly about myself, I have 16 years experience in human resources field. Previously worked for Vodafone, Philip Morris, and Tesco, and currently I work for Xero, as you already mentioned, on interim basis. I actually am covering a colleague who is on parental leave, I guess is very on topic, and I'm really looking forward to talk about it a bit more later on. Answering your question, how the 18 months have been? Just very interesting that last year, around January, just before the pandemic hit us, I made a decision to make a career change for myself. So I left my employer and I was about to move into another role just beginning of February. And suddenly lockdown started. And because of the circumstances, that role put on hold. And I found myself in a place as a full time mother instead of starting a new job. So it's been a really interesting, unpredictable, uncomfortable um, experience for me. I guess most of us felt the same, and I'm one of those people. But after a while, after the first initial shock, a couple of months, and what I've done was just trying to take the advantage out of the situation, meaning trying to spend quality time with my son, and who was just before 2 years old, birthday. So I just spent time with him, and I also spent some time on what do I want to really do as a next step because I was rushing probably. So, but I appreciated that. Also appreciated that not both me and my husband had to work because I know many people, many parents struggle during pandemic, both mother and father or both parents, they had to work and juggle childcare. So it didn't happen to us. So I was lucky.
So you've mentioned, a lot of people have had a tough time, especially mothers. So the statistics tell us that during lockdown, women were spending 8 hours a day homeschooling their children, and that's more than double the amount of time that men have been spending. How should businesses be supporting women to deal with this inequity?
This is a really good question. And I think we have a lot of thinking behind it, not only looking to the surface. So I would say women make up around 39% of global employment, but they only account for 54%. Not only actually, this is the wrong way of calling it, they account 54% of job losses during pandemic. So that I guess gives us a little bit of a perspective. And one reason for this greater effect on women is that the pandemic increased the burden of unpaid care, which is disproportionately carried by women. And I did a bit of research and reading on that. Women and men tend to cluster in different occupations. We are not surprised about that. But women are disproportionately represented in sectors negatively affected by the pandemic. So I'm giving this information because why women spend more time for the childcare, maybe because more women lost their jobs and they had to stay at home. Mine was by choice, of course, but I was one of them. So carried the childcare. So I think first of all, businesses need to give equal opportunities to women in the workplace to increase the contribution of women to the workforce. This is really important. It's not only just plastering how we can, give here and then time off to women. First, we need to provide equal opportunities to women. And post-pandemic, I think, will be very critical for businesses to address this problem, to remember this problem and provide opportunities to women at workplace, probably more than ever. Also, state-funded childcare is critical, I guess. So women, as mostly as a primary caregiver, mostly by choice as well, no judgment in there, but they can go back to work and parents can get the support they need. I also believe providing flexible work opportunities is important because it's a little bit black and white. So we are sometimes forcing women to make that choice. Go and look after your kid or work. I think there's a gray area there. So if we can give that flexibility, they can still spend time with their kids, but have a chance to flexibly work, and we can see more women at workplace. And the last and most important, I think, crucial measure is to change social norm about who bears childcare, isn't it? And childcare responsibilities and businesses to provide parental leave opportunities to both parents, regardless of their gender.
Fantastic, absolutely. So, COVID has really changed the landscape when it comes to thinking about how parents balance work and their caring responsibilities. Um, what lessons have you learned about creating a family-friendly workplace? What has the pandemic taught you?
Yeah, I'm just going to give a bit of an overview first and a little bit example from our company in case could be example to anybody. I think working while parenting has always been a balancing act, juggling different roles, but the pandemic has led to any existing structures and routines being abandoned. However, I believe pandemic also gave us the opportunity to be more understanding towards each other and get to know lives of each other. What I mean with that is probably people with no parental duties um, just had seen the life of their colleagues with families and children. We all, witnessed probably kids joined to the meetings and popped up here and then. It's not only kids, by the way. If you can be caring, you don't have to be parent, but you could be looking after your parent, elderly parent, or you can have a pet because it's just so important to some people as important as kids. I think we just saw our personal lives more than ever. It's so interesting that we've been physically more distant, but probably more close to each other's lives in a way. And and I think big learning for companies, we learned that from experience, providing flexibility to employees works, and businesses still are able to deliver the same outputs, isn't it? Probably before, maybe one day from office if you're lucky, but now 5 days. Sorry, one day from home if you're lucky, but now 5 days from home, but still people work productively. At Xero, we've been very lucky. I'm genuinely reporting our employee engagement scores stayed stable. We were quite worried at the beginning, but I'm so happy. We've been so happy to see that. But it's not by luck because we owe it to our strategy to prioritize our well-being initiatives. In September last year, we appointed a global head of well-being whose only role and focus is delivering well-being strategy and initiatives across the world. This probably like launching well-being hub, mental health training programs, and we also prepared a toolkit for people leaders because people leaders going through this themselves, but also they had to support people in their teams, which is quite actually challenging and stressful at times. And yeah, I can tell we just definitely invested in well-being. We also have well-being leave for our employees, separate from their annual leave. It's really important because, especially with the circumstances, they had to look after their kids, or if they're carers, elderly, or whomever, they could take some time off to look after themselves or their loved one, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But most importantly, we trusted our colleagues, we trusted our leaders, we trusted our employees. We looked at the outputs, not that like time spent on screen when you were live or just working. I think that's probably the most important elements and learning for us. Just trust your employees, trust your leaders, give flexibility, and I think that worked for us.
Mm. I think actually you've mentioned some really important points. I think the trust one is very important. I think the before the pandemic, a lot of people didn't believe that anyone could work from home effectively. And as someone who's been working from home for a long time. I know from personal experience that I'm much more effective working from home than I am if I'm working in an office. And we've now the pandemic has proven that actually you can trust people to work home because they will.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important point to emphasize. So if a company wants to rethink its policies and make sure that it is family friendly, where do you advise that they start? What do you think are the most important policies that companies have to get right?
Yeah, I think that's really nice personal sharing at your end. My personal learning, I was one of those people. I'm being honest. I was thinking that maybe working from home all the time is not as efficient, but I'm being open, honest, and transparent. I got my lesson. So, and I think it all starts with providing flexibility and options and letting people decide for themselves. Sometimes, as employers, we are trying to parent our employees and try to bring like one solution for everybody. That definitely doesn't work. Everything also starts with culture and how top management and the people leaders are role modeling and living the values, walking the talk. There isn't one size fits all or a silver, bullet, as I say. But if I will summarize a couple of things that focus areas for me. First, providing psychologically safe environment to your employees, giving space to them to be able to talk about their needs, to be able to talk about requesting flexibly. That doesn't mean that you're going to approve, confirm all requests, but I think everyone should feel safe and confident to be able to share what's going on with them. That's really important. And communicating proactively and showing empathy, that meaning keeping employees informed of possible changes or demands that may be coming in future so they can plan ahead. It's also important for people leaders to keep a pulse of what people are dealing with at home. If you don't talk to them, you just, especially with the screen, it was so, because we are not in the office, you can't read people feelings. So like the structured communication and conscious empathy, the effort to show empathy is really critical. I mentioned the providing flexibility at the beginning, but I think it's really essential. Asking them what they really need. Flexible work hours, flexible location is important, and trusting your employees and measuring outputs rather than face time is
Yeah.
important. I told that role modeling is essential. Based on my personal experience, it really starts from top because people look up. If the leadership is adopting those behaviors and culture and living the values, people follow the same. Otherwise, they don't feel encouraged or brave enough to come and talk. And at Xero, for example, last week was a big week. We communicated that we will open our offices. We've been working from home since last March, actually. It's quite a long time.
Mm.
But we are going to open the offices as a choice, as I started my conversation. We are not going to force anybody this year with all this unknown. We are going to open the offices for our employees, Zeros, who really would like to go back to office, who would like to separate a bit home environment and work environment, because we need to be understanding to those people as well. Some of us want to go back to office. I think that's a good one. And we also introduced flexible work policy. It's going to give a chance to all employees to ask for flexibility or have a conversation. And again, location flexibility or time, work time, flexible time, starting late or just finishing late. They will be able to have those conversations with their leaders.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the point you make about how important choice is, and not everybody wants to work from home. For some people, maybe they don't have the right physical environment. For others, maybe they're just more of an extrovert and they just love being with people and they just need to see people. So I think, when we're talking about these policies, I think it's important not to go too far in the other direction,
Mhm.
and to support people to do what is right for them. Um, One of the things in looking at parental leave and what happens when a woman takes time to have a family. What really I found quite interesting was one of the key policies that encourage women back into the workplace after having a family is actually paternity leave. The women are more likely to return to work if their partner has access to paternity leave.
Mhm.
Um, so how do we make the argument that a generous paternity leave is important, and how do we actually encourage men to take their paternity leave?
That's a really good thinking. Again, I will start a little bit from high level. As we talked about, I mentioned it's crucial to change the social norm first of that about who bears childcare responsibilities, and businesses to provide parental leave opportunities to both parents regardless of their gender. And at companies, as mentioned, this is just what governments provides, but on top is culturally what management will do in terms of living the values and being the role model is really essential. And providing equal opportunities to both parents is definitely an important element and a big step. And I'm really happy to see that more and more companies doing it right now, isn't it? So it was probably 5 years ago, it was maternity leave. Now we have a term, parental leave. We call it parental leave at Xero for a reason. We don't call it maternity or paternity leave, it's parental leave, because all primary carers, regardless of their gender, are entitled to 26 weeks fully paid parental leave supported by Xero. We acknowledge this and provide parental leave to our employees to let them choose for themselves once again and their families. I'm telling that because it's all right. Some mothers, they just would like to use all time themselves. I was one of them. Again, personal choice. If it's just by choice, it's okay, and we shouldn't judge those mothers as well if that works for that family. But I guess giving that choice and flexibility so they make the decision themselves is really essential. It's helpful but not enough. Shared parental leave is a good approach to provide equal opportunity to employees regardless of their gender. Um, we also have flexi return. That's also, it's not all about going on parental leave. How you're going to come back to work is important. So parents, again, primary carer, regardless of their gender, they're able to ask reduced hours during their first 2 months. I guess it's a very critical transitional point. So this is a bit of background, but your question was how to encourage, I guess, is again, normalize it. Men are parents as well. It doesn't have to be man, the second parent, not the primary, but the second parent, regardless of their gender. It could be same gender couples as well. They are able to share this load. And if you give that opportunity, and if you have leaders doing that, living that, and taking that time off, people will follow, I guess. Probably. That's what I would say.
I think it's important for male leaders as well to be seen to be engaging in childcare, not just taking leave, but actually doing the work of childcare. I have heard some horror stories from academia of men kind of using their paternity leave to work on their research or write a grant, which is not the point of paternity leave at all. So when we're talking about parental leave policies and supporting parents, mothers, and fathers with day to day tasks, how do you
Mhm.
encourage more men to do the school run, take the kids to the doctors when they're poorly, and all those sorts of tasks
Mhm.
that have traditionally been seen as a woman's role? If we're sharing parental leave, we also have to share parental responsibility. So, is there a role around in company policy and also culture to encourage men to take on more of these tasks?
Yes, I can give. By the way, I'm shocked with the example you've given. Never heard of it. I laughed, but probably was a nervous laugh. It's not funny at all, of course. Parental leave is for parental duty, it's not for academic research, but um, anyhow. So from Xero perspective, I guess, again, I keep coming back to culture, but I think it's really important and role modeling, because I know I'm going to give real life example. I'm in senior leadership team, and I have colleagues, male colleagues. They've been very vocal about it. Hey, sorry, I can't do this meeting 10 to 11 a.m. I'm homeschooling my kid. No one ever rolled their eyes, or there hasn't been any occasion people found it odd or extra or abnormal. I guess that really gives the space. If you start this with your senior leadership team and imagine the rest of the company, they will think and feel, yes, that's okay and that's normal. It's not something extra at all. I think that's really critical, to give that space and encourage people to take time off. Probably that would be my answer. Just not making people feel uncomfortable, even just joking about it. It's not really right, and not accepting, like when you're setting up your policies like diversity and inclusion, or parental leave policy and well-being policy. It's being inclusive towards everybody, not only women. I guess this is a good start, just setting that tone and asking your leaders to be role model, accepting, and always be supportive regardless of gender. I think that's a really good starting point.
You mentioned earlier empathy and the importance of empathy in developing a family-friendly workplace. Empathy is a subject that's come up a lot over the last couple of years. I'm hearing a lot more businesses talking about trying to deliberately and mindfully develop empathy in their policies. How do businesses create an empathetic culture?
Yeah, I think again, I feel like it's all about listening and providing a psychological safety. I keep repeating because it's one of our leadership uh, aspects, providing psychological safety to our teams. We measure our team efficiency starting with how psychologically safe that team is, and it sits on the shoulder of the leader. I'm giving the background because it's really, we live that value at Xero. It's providing psychologically safe environments to your employees as people leader. Whatever their circumstances, they can come and talk to you. It doesn't mean you don't have to be a parent, and it's all right. And again, it's not about parents. Everyone has different circumstances. I think just sitting down, listening, and asking questions, being curious. How are you doing? If someone is saying, I'm homeschooling, it's not just all about just having one conversation and letting it go. It's having sometimes a check in, just asking, being curious about their life, saying, how it's going? Are you okay? Do you need support? And I think being a bit vulnerable. I really don't know how it feels like being a parent. It's okay to say so. Or once again, I'm trying to be inclusive. It's not all about parents. I don't know how it feels like looking after your elderly parents. How are you doing? Or, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at showing my emotions. It's okay, I don't know what to say in this situation. It's okay to say that. I think one of the strengths of being a good leader is being vulnerable and accepting just what you don't know and being honest about it, and just be curious. I think probably that's empathy for me.
And I think as well, there's a lot of importance in small talk, and this is something that I've been talking about for many years, actually, because there is this idea that in a professional setting, you're not supposed to bring your home life to work. You're not supposed to engage in too much small talk, not supposed to share too much of yourself. And I think that's really changed over the last sort of several years as we're starting, and particularly with COVID, that it is actually important to share what's happening so that your colleagues have context for how you are. If you've been up all night with the kids, then that's why you're tired and yawning. It's not a sign of rudeness, it's a sign that you're exhausted. And then that information gives people an opportunity to be empathic, to be sympathetic. And I think that's, for some people, I think it's quite hard to be vulnerable, as you said. They have to do something perhaps they haven't done before, which is to reveal a little bit more of themselves at work. And I think maybe the pandemic has forced that on us.
Yeah.
And certainly now, I think as well, part of the upside of this is, when we see pets and children on Zoom calls, on video calls, it's easier then to empathize with the other person because they are you see them as a more fully rounded human being, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really nice summary. And just you made me think as well, empathy should be both ways because not everyone is parents. Again, from inclusive perspective, we shouldn't push aside people not parents, and they don't need to know. I guess it's also our responsibility. I'm a parent. I have a team. None of them as parents yet. So just telling them a bit what you're going through. Just thinking they don't know. Sometimes people react in a way not because they do it on purpose or maybe they don't know. I think we all are responsible, especially if you're a people leader. We need to learn and be curious. But as parents as well, I guess give that space to people who are not parents that they might not know and just a little bit sharing your life, a bit giving a perspective. It's also empathy, other corner of empathy, both ways.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know, parents definitely good project managers, isn't it? It's just trusting the parents that when they're offline, that's okay. Probably they will catch up. So, or I think we all learn from my personal experience after becoming a parent. I learned, how we can maximize half an hour or just like the 7 hours or 8 hours a workday more than ever. So probably before I was a bit more relaxed, I could do overtimes and such. But after then, I have to leave on time to pick up my kids, and it made me excellent project manager. And then complete the things on time. So I guess not having biases and stereotypes. Just being open to be curious and listen to each other,
Yeah.
probably that's the way forward.
I think so. I think so. So, and this almost answers the final question, which is, creating a family friendly workplace isn't just about management. It's not just about parents. It's about all of us. So, what can the rest of us do? Those of us who don't have kids, to help create this family friendly environment.
Yeah, I guess I answered it sort of, and I think if we're going to be grateful about this pandemic, one thing, as I said, as employees and employers, is I think we had a window to our lives, each other lives, personal lives, a bit more empathy, understanding, and it gave us a perspective. There are more important things in life. Work is important, but we have lives out of offices. So, and just again, just not try to not to have a stereotype or bias, or if you have bias, just be mindful about it because we all have unconscious biases. And again, honestly, before becoming parents, I never understood why my parents' colleagues leaving, like rushing out of the door. So, but it's okay. I didn't have that experience. Just being understanding that we all have different journey and we are at a different stage of our journeys, and just a bit of trying to talk to each other, listen without judgmental, judging each other or having bias. I think that's essential. But after office is open, hopefully, welcoming kids to the office is a good, I think, good good opportunity, and just colleagues to meet each other, families also. Again, being curious about their lives, I guess, also really a good thing to do.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ezgi. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.